morning. This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thanks for joining us this morning for our first housing call of the year. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Welcome to 2026. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Our top things this week. Their federal budget negotiations are ongoing. For those that don't know or need a refresher, Congress needs to pass the 9 remaining spending bills by January 30th, when the current continuing resolution that is in place ends. So there is still no HUD spending package, but that should be released any day now. There is an update on the fiscal year 2025 COC, Continuum of Care Notice of Funding Opportunity. And there are a lot of disaster recovery updates for Western North Carolina programs, such as at the end of last year, if you remember, the Grow and See Single Family Housing Program deadline was extended through the end of this month, January 31st. And then there also are several webinars and meetings coming up this month about the small rental rehabilitation program. And then there is a convening happening about for the North Carolina VOAD group. So we will share more details about that. We're going to jump in first to organizational updates. And we are launching a little differently this year. Many of you all know that county profiles are delayed thanks to the government shutdown, which caused data delays. So that data, part of the data that we use won't be released until the end of the month. Because of that, we won't be releasing our county profiles until later at the end of February or early March. But we want to start off a little better. So we want you to share a video with us. We want you to share your dreams, your plans, your hopes for 2026. Despite how rough 2025 was for many of us, the new year is still a time to dream and think about what could be different. And there is still a lot of uncertainty and disruption as we enter 2026. So this in no means is a way to kind of pretend that that is not a thing and that we're not going into that this year. But we do want you to take a moment and we want to know about your plans and your hopes and your dreams and your intentions with your organization and how you hope to make an impact in your communities this year. We want you to record a video and share it with us so that we can be a part of that together. So there's a link in the call notes where you can upload a video. Really, really simple. It doesn't have to be super long. And we can't wait to share that with you and share that with others. Federal updates. So again, Congress needs to pass the 9 remaining spending bills by January 30th. The second tranche of bills that we're waiting for was released on Sunday, January 11th. However, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development budget, THUD budget, is expected to be released in the third wave and final tranche of bills. And so we're still waiting on that text, but it should be released any day now, we hope. An update on the fiscal year 2025 COC NOFO litigation. As we've been discussing on the past few housing calls, in November, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development issued a notice of funding opportunity that would drastically reduce permanent housing funding for continuums of care and instead move to a transitional housing model with work requirements. These proposed changes would put over 170,000 people at risk of losing stable housing. And so the National Alliance to End Homelessness, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, along with a number of different state and local governments, are suing HUD for the unlawful funding restrictions placed on the Continuum of Care grant program. Litigation is ongoing. In the meantime, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition and the National Alliance to End Homelessness are calling on Congress to hold HUD accountable to its promised 2-year NOFO cycle and to include language in any final THUD bill that would extend funding for previously awarded projects for another 12 months. This language is necessary to protect critical funding that communities rely on for homelessness response. So we have all of this linked in our call notes, and we want you to check out a resource from our partners at the National Alliance to End Homelessness to learn a bit more about the NOFO that HUD issued and the different harmful effects that it would have on communities. Some additional federal headlines that we're watching include an interesting quote that President Trump made, saying he will seek to ban institutional investors from buying single-family homes. This is something that has been a significant conversation all over the country, and also as in North Carolina for the past several years, even at our state General Assembly. And we often receive questions about it. So we'll be keeping an eye on this. And we are also keeping an eye on the dueling housing bills that are kind of illustrating Congress's different priorities in addressing the nation's housing crisis. So there's a little bit of back and forth in trying to find a legislative vehicle to pass a comprehensive housing proposal. And there is a report on that, a piece on that from Novogradac. Moving on to state updates. The House and Senate will convene each Tuesday and Thursday morning, usually Thursdays. And oftentimes votes are scheduled for these days. But this week, even though they are convening, there are doesn't seem to be any votes that will happen, at least on the House side. So no House votes are anticipated, but there are several key committee meetings that are happening starting today and tomorrow as well. We are watching several of those, or we'll be there in person. Some of the ones that we're watching for today at 9 a.m., there has been the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on Health and Human Services has been meeting. And then the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on Medicaid will meet later today at 1 p.m. Tomorrow, the House Select Committee on Involuntary Commitment and Public Safety will meet at 9:30 a.m. And then the House Select Committee on Property Tax Reduction and Reform will be meeting at 10 a.m. So we will be in person in the building tomorrow morning for some of those meetings. And on Thursday, the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on Justice and Public Safety will be meeting at 1 p.m. The links to those committees and how to stream those meetings will be included in the call notes. A special announcement to just something that affects all of us, no matter what policy area you're in. Voting by mail started yesterday in North Carolina for the 2026 primary election. And we want to make sure folks know and understand how to participate in this process and some changes that recently took place. So the U.S. Postal Service recently announced that mail may no longer be postmarked on the day the Postal Service takes possession of it. So with that in mind, folks that are using vote by mail should mail their ballots way in advance of Election Day for primaries, which happens on Tuesday, March 3rd. And the last day to request an absentee ballot is February 17th. In-person early voting will take place from February 12th through February 28th. So again, the U.S. Postal Service is no longer postmarking mail on the day it gets the mail that you're trying to send. So that means you need to send and mail in your ballots earlier. Moving on to disaster recovery updates, the Governor's Advisory Committee on Western North Carolina held their first meeting of the year on Friday, January 9th, and they announced and discussed the application deadline for the single-family housing program and why it's been extended, but it has been extended through January 31st, 2026. We still have the link to apply in the call notes. There also are several different local headlines and pieces throughout the state that are highlighting how people are looking at a new year of Helene recovery, and also how our friends and communities such as Swannanoa are continuing to rebuild as the new year begins. There's news up from NC Commerce. 8 different North Carolina communities has received $12 million in neighborhood revitalization grants. And then there are also several headlines that show housing continuing to be something that is really vital and is on the minds of people all over our state. In reports and resources and events, there are several things we want to lift up for you. Keeping on the disaster recovery theme for a moment, on the event side, the North Carolina Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters, or VOAD, NC VOAD, they're having their annual meeting today, January 13th at 10 a.m. To noon at the North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church in Gardner, North Carolina. There is a virtual attendance possible on Zoom, so we have that link in the call notes for those of you that are attending in person. You already know about that. Renew North Carolina is hosting 2 virtual information sessions to provide an overview of the small rental rehabilitation program so that they can answer questions from potential applicants. And this program helps eligible rental property owners, like landlords, repair, reconstruct, or replace small rental properties that are between 1 to 4 units that were damaged by Hurricane Helene. So a list of information, a link for information around qualifications and how to apply are in the call notes, but there are 2 sessions, like we mentioned. There's one tomorrow, January 14th at 1 p.m. Again, this is virtual. And then there is one on January 21st at 1 p.m., a virtual link to register for that as well. The same content will be covered in both sessions. And the next Governor's Advisory Committee on Western North Carolina will meet again on the morning of Monday, February 9th. On the reports and resources side, there are several, I think, cool reports and resources. This is definitely just exposing more of my nerdiness. Want to give a shout out to Wake County. I was actually going down a spiral rabbit hole over their data the other week, but they just released a dashboard, an interactive dashboard that shows and tracks the impact of their housing investments. And so how much they've invested, how much they've leveraged, how many units that has led to. It is really, really powerful. And it's a really cool way to interact with that data and see how far public dollars really have gone in trying to address the housing crisis. There's also a report out of the Richmond Fed titled Land at Risk, Heirs Properties in the Carolinas. And so if you are interested in heirs property, or you know about the challenges that folks in North Carolina and in the Carolinas face when it comes to heirs property, this is a really powerful report to look at. There's also a contingency planning toolkit that the National Alliance to End Homelessness has released for the fiscal year 25 Continuum of Care Notice of Funding opportunity. So this is a planning toolkit for organizations that are being impacted by the drama and the volatility that is happening with HUD and with the Notice of Funding opportunities. With that, I will leave you all. Thank you for joining us for the first housing call of 2026. Don't forget to submit your videos. And as always, reach out if you have any questions. We're going to buckle up and go along for this ride together. And we'll talk to you next time.